The Powersmart PS5150 gets a lot of things right. My favorite feature is something that's kind of silly, but I can't help it. It's my favorite feature. Let's go over some of the basic things that it has going on with it. This is going to be a 500 watt power station. It has a 500 watt inverter, 461 watt hours of portable power inside of it. It charges over 8mm. That's important to me. Not the most important thing, but I like that it has 8mm. It has a standard power plug. You get two AC outlets. They share that power, obviously. It does do pass-through charging, which is being charged and discharged at the same time, so that's cool. This thing gets a lot of things right that a lot of power stations don't get right. So you get one USB-C. I didn't get that right. More than one USB-C would have been great. But it has 3 quick charge USB-A ports. A lot of these power stations will have 1 fast and 2 slow, but all 3 of these are quick charge USB-A ports. It didn't have more than 1 USB-C port. That kind of sucked. It has 10 watt wireless charging on the top here. Bam. I just made another discovery after finishing recording this video. The wireless charger is always on. I mean, the power has to be on. USB, DC, AC can all be turned off. Put your phone on top, and the wireless phone is going to charge. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I wanted you to know. You got your typical 12 volt 5521 ports on the bottom, top, something like that. The DC ports are rated at 10 amps, and it has these covers on all the ports. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of covers on power stations. They're a little bit annoying, but because this one is the power station that I pull outside and charge the most from my X-Star 100 watt panel, which has a default to 8mm charge port. My 8mm to MC4 burnt up. If you saw this short over here, you know what I'm talking about. This power station is lithium ion. I know a lot of people don't like lithium ion because of the safety concerns, but of all these power stations that we've had over all this time, we have had very few power stations have a battery chemistry blow up type of situation. Now I get it. You don't want to be the one person that has that type of issue, so I understand. I'm a fan of LiFePo, but I've become a fan of lithium ion kind of recently because of the temperature variance from LiFePo. So I can pull these lithium ion power stations outside and charge them in a lower temperature than I would with my LiFePo power station. So that's a good thing that I like about them. I'm just saying. Now, for a somewhat basic in appearance power station, the screen is it's pretty cool. I mean, the quality of the screen is nothing to write home about. It's just like a typical display with a typical backlight. But it does show things like time remaining to charge. It shows your watts coming in. I think that that's really cool. That's a nice touch to have, especially on something that's kind of like really freaking EcoFlow. There is one thing about this user interface that is a little bit annoying. It does have a power button, right? That's cool. But there is no display button. So you have to press, it has the age-old, EB70 problem. You have to press one of these 3 things or 4 things, we'll talk about that in a second, to actually get the screen to illuminate. And if you press the power button, when it's on, you press the power button, it shuts off. So forget your load that's on it. Anything that's being powered, it will turn off. You will lose power. I thought that was an interesting thing. Slight annoyance. Now, one of my favorite features, and I talked about this earlier, is it has a flashlight and an LED. The flashlight over here is 1 watt. And then much like this other power station company, it has an LED right here, which it cycles through. You can't do both at the same time, so that's kind of sad. The LED diffuse joint is not as bright as the flashlight, so I find myself when I have this in a bedroom or something, when I turn on the flashlight, I typically get more illumination from that one, even considering the fact that the handle light is diffused. It does have the retracting handle, so when you turn it on, you have the light in here. It would have been nice if you could have both of them on at the same time, but that's not a deal breaker to me. That flashlight can also be turned on and off without the device being on. Very small things, but not all power stations can do that, so I appreciate that when that happens. It does include all of the cables that you need to use it. Good job, Powersmart. It has a power brick and AC cable, so it's not fancy all-in-one. I don't travel a lot with my power station, so that doesn't matter as much to me. And I typically only charge my power stations from solar. So, I mean, the power brick doesn't really play a big deal or big role for me in selecting a power station. It also comes with, like I said, the 8mm to MC4 connector, and it also has a 12-volt power socket charger, so you could charge it from the car. This does max out at 100 watts of solar. The highest that I could see from it was 95 watts, and I had just pulled two panels in parallel, two 100-watt panels in parallel, popped it onto here, and it maxed out at 95, whereas like the device that was on it before was getting at least 141, 150. So 100 watts of solar. Now the AC charger charges it a little faster at 125 watts. So with this 400 and some odd watt hour capacity, it's about 470, 461. Let me look at the thing and just not guess, right? Well, I guess 461 watt hours of capacity. That'll charge that relatively quickly on an AC. All right, maybe I was wrong about the charge rate. It's getting about 100 watts in over the AC charge situation. Let's look at the power brick and see what it says here. Yeah, 24 volts times 5. I mean, what's 25 times 5? But it's also at 100%. I was pretty sure I saw this thing charge at 100 and something watts, but I may be confusing it with something else. And it's getting about 60 watts from this particular power station right here. I haven't tried any other power station, but 60 watts from the 12-volt charge. I did do a capacity test on it. I'll drop that footage right here. I did the math on it. I don't remember what it was when I recorded that, but it got a good percentage of power out of it. The solar voltage range is 12 to 28 volts. I didn't see that they specified the amps. If they did, I'll drop it down here as well. One thing that's important to me these days is how loud is the fan. The fan on this dip is relatively quiet with my normal loads. Based on my experience, it typically doesn't turn on under a certain watt load because it's a 500 watt inverter. I have used one of my 200 watt space heaters on it, and the fan it sounds about normal. I'll drop some footage here so you can hear the fan. This is the fan running a 500 watt load. It's a heater. Oh, you can see it's getting an error message, but it's still powering it, right? Let's come around to hear the fan. It's pretty, I mean, you hear the fan, but it's not super disruptive or anything, especially considering the fact that it's pulling about 500 watts through it. Now you can see that the heater has settled down, 490. I'm gonna run this for a little bit. But the fan, this is the loudest one. It had a little bit of fan noise and then it went up to like its second one. The next thing is to pop this 200 watt heater on it and see if it does this fan or if it does like a different, more quieter fan. So let's see. All right, heater's plugged in, turned on, and then we'll turn the AC on and see what's what. And that's the fan that it's making with about a 300 watt load. This is going to eventually go down to the 200 that it should be. That ain't bad. Nice little subtle fan from the Powersmart. Yeah, let's unplug this load but keep the AC on. Fan instantly turns off. Now you can see that it's doing 230 some odd. I'm gonna grab this right here, pop it in just to kind of show improve. I'm not typically into that, but you might as well see it. See the input lights up. Using 231 and all of the lights are still on past your charging. Now it would have been nice to have a 100 watt PD port. It would have been nice to have a bi-directional port. But you get what you get. This would have been a nice solid device if it had the ability to charge up multiple ways. Currently, it only has the barrel connection. I've never had a problem with a device charging over the barrel connector. I think some people have talked about the barrel connector getting loose and not being as snug as an XT60. The reason why I bring that up is because when you have only one source of charging, me and my paranoid mind is always like, well, what if that port breaks? Then I'm out of luck. So it not having any other way to charge it is a downside for me. Overall, interesting little device. It may be a design from yesteryear, but I mean, keep your eye out on it. It may be something that you find useful if you could get it at the right price. There certainly are some other power stations that you can get, but for me, these videos are about talking about the device to give people opinion and my take on it and whether or not it would be useful. Now, I like this because it has an 8mm connection. That is clutch for me because I have some other 8mm connections all around the house. It maxes out at 100 watts of solar, which is also cool with me. Has about 461 watt hours. I have no complaints about the device. It doesn't necessarily blow me away, but it works very well. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't necessarily look cheap. The design is a little bit dated, but I think it's a solid lithium ion power station. What do you guys think?